Hi, welcome to another week of digital distance learning. This week we're going to be focusing on the quadratic formula, which is going to help us figure out the x-intercepts for any equation that I could give you. Up to this point, we've only had equations like x squared minus 4 or x squared plus 5x plus 6. Every time there's just an x squared. But now we are going to look at equations that have a coefficient like negative 7x squared or 5x squared, and how to handle those when the x problem doesn't work. Now, get ready. This equation's a little long, but I'll promise you it's going to be one of the easiest things. You definitely want to have a pencil and paper in hand for this one because this is what it looks like. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Crazy. It's not that bad. Let's get to it. And if you're wondering why I'm in my car, it's because I have errands to run and things to do, and you guys, sometimes we gotta multitask. I don't know. It happens. But just like you, I'm up at night and getting things done. So it doesn't matter if you're getting things done at 10 in the morning or at 10 at night. Please, please, please turn in your work and let me know if you need help. You can email me, you can text me, you can call me, even if it's in the middle of the night. I will return your call. Just reach out to me, let me know you need help, and that way I know what you need. For the first example, we are going to solve it. We are going to find the x-intercepts, that is, using the same method, this x, that we learned last week. We are going to add to 2 and multiply to negative 15. Well, I know that 1 times 15 is 15, and that 3 times 5 is 15. And right away, I notice that if I write 5 and negative 3, I will find my correct answers. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. If I didn't notice that, I could have also started with 1 times 15 and would have gotten to the answer by trying until I got to 3 and 5. My factor form is x plus 5 times x minus 3. And now to find the x-intercept, we just need to think about what number inside that first parenthesis, x plus 5, will give me 0, as well as what number inside that second parenthesis will give me 0. Well, negative 5 plus 5 is 0, so negative 5 is one x-intercept, and positive 3 minus 3 is 0, so positive 3 is another x-intercept. That means that on the graph, I will cross the x-axis at the point negative 5 and the point positive 3. Therefore, my graph will look a little bit like this, a parabola opening upwards because it is a positive equation, and my x-intercepts. Now let's try the same problem using the quadratic formula. I need to begin by identifying my a, my b, and my c. My a is 1. If there is no coefficient, no number in front of the variable, it is always 1. My b is 2, and my c is negative 15. This is usually pretty easy to find because they are in order A, B, C. Now I am going to write my quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And my next step, step 3, is to substitute. I am going to substitute the a, the b, and the c in my equation. X equals negative b. Well, my b is 2. Therefore, I am going to put negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Again, b is 2. Therefore, I am going to put 2 squared, and it is a good habit to put it in parentheses, just in case you have a negative. Minus 4 times a, which is 1, and I'm putting parentheses for multiplication, and c, which is negative 15. And now I am going to divide not just the radical, the entire thing by 2 times a, and a is 1. Now that I have substituted, I can solve. We are going to begin by solving the numerator, the part on top. Let's see. X equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared. What is 2 squared? Well, 2 times 2 is 4. So I am going to write 4 minus, what is 4 times 1 times -15? -4 times 1 is -4 times -15 is positive 60. Remember, negative times negative is positive. And then 2 times 1 is 2. I can continue to solve. My radicand is not simplified yet. I notice that 4 plus 60 is 64 divided by 2. And one more step to solve. I have to say again, x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 64, which is 8. And now divide all of that by 2. Finally, we need to deal with our plus and minus solutions. There are going to be 2 solutions because positive 8 times positive 8 is equal to 64, as well as -8 times -8 is also 64. I am going to begin with x equals -2 plus 8 divided by 2, and then x equals -2 minus 8 divided by 2. The plus sign goes to one side and the minus to the other side, so that we are going to have 2 solutions. Now let's solve each of these parts. X equals -2 plus 8 is 6, divided by 2 is equal to 3. So I know one of my x-intercepts will be 3. Let's try the negative side. X equals -2 minus 8 is -10, divided by 2 is equal to -5. So you can see both methods give you the correct answer. But now we are going to take a look at an example where the first method didn't work and the quadratic formula will. In example number 2, we see that x squared has a coefficient. When that is the case, only the quadratic formula will help you. So let's begin by identifying that a is -7, b is 14, and c is 21. Since the x method will not help us here, we have to write the quadratic formula, that is x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And it is a really good idea to write it every single time to help you avoid errors and to help you remember it. Now let's begin substituting. X equals -b, and I notice that my b is 14, and so I write -14 plus or minus the square root of b squared, and b squared, again my b is 14, so I replace that with 14 squared. And it is a really good habit to put it in parentheses. It is technically correct if you do not, as long as it is positive. Minus 4 times a, which is -7, and c, which is 21. We are not finished. On the bottom, we can divide by 2a. 2 times a, which is -7. It is really important to remember the negative, so you do not get an incorrect answer. Now let's go ahead and begin solving. In order to solve, I write -14 plus or minus the square root of 14 squared. 14 squared is 196. Minus -4 times -7, which is positive 28, and 28 times 21 is 588. Let's divide everything by 2 times negative 7, which is negative 14. We still have more to solve, so let's continue. Do not be afraid by the big numbers. It is okay. Negative 14 plus or minus the square root of 196 plus 588, and you can use the calculator here. We have 784, and we divide all of this by negative 14. One more step before separating the plus or minus. I am going to write x equals negative 14 plus or minus 28. The square root of 784 is 28, divided by negative 14. If you do not remember how to do square roots in your calculator, please ask me and I'm happy to help you. Now to separate the problem, we have negative 14 plus 28 divided by negative 14 and negative 14 minus 28 divided by negative 14. I write both problems first and then solve each so that I do not forget that I have two answers. Now let's begin solving. Negative 14 plus 28 is 14 divided by negative 14 is negative 1. So we know one x-intercept is at negative 1. On the other side, negative 14 minus 28 is going to be negative 42. Divided by negative 14, I have positive 3. So my other x-intercept is 3. I do not have to change the signs here. The quadratic formula gives you the answer. There is no need to change the sign, but you should notice that if you put this on the graph, on the coordinate plane, you should have a point at negative 1 and 3. For our final example, we are going to take a look at 0 equals 2x squared, where a is 2, minus 14x, where negative 14 is b, and that negative is important, plus 24, where 24 is c. My first step is to identify the variables. I have done that. And my second step is to write my formula. Please write the formula every single time. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now we are going to begin substituting. I am going to put minus and then b. And notice that my b is negative 14. And because it is a negative 14, I have a minus from the formula and a negative from the b. I have a minus negative 14. Next, we continue with the plus or minus symbol and the square root of negative 14 squared in parentheses minus 4 times a, where 2 is a, times c, where c is 24. From here, I can substitute in the denominator. 2a becomes 2 times 2, since a is equal to 2. And let's begin solving. X equals minus negative. A negative and a negative together, when they are multiplying, they become positive. So we have positive 14 plus or minus the square root of negative 14 squared. That means negative 14 times negative 14, which is positive 196. Negative 4 times 2 times 24 is negative 192. And 2 times 2 is, of course, 4. We continue to solve. 14 plus or minus 196 minus 192, which is 4, and we divide everything by 4 again. We still have to simplify that radical, and we know that the square root of 4 is positive or negative 2. And now we are ready to separate our answers into the plus side and the negative side. Remember that all square roots have two answers, such as the square root of 25 could be 5 times 5 or negative 5 times negative 5. On the plus side, therefore, I have 14 plus 2 divided by 4. And on the minus side, on the negative side, I have 14 minus 2 divided by 4. So I take care of both possible answers the radical could bring. 14 plus 2 is 16. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So one of my x-intercepts is at 4. 14 minus 2 is 12. Divided by 4 is 3. So the other x-intercept is a positive 3.